At the heart of viability of reparations is because most people aren't able or willing to have genuine conversations.
Because once the word comes up in their mind, they already have an idea of what it is, and that heat starts building.
Yes. And I think I've demonstrated through, I'm telling you, the vast majority of my conversations with the opposition that reparations are really viable, and almost no one can argue against it. The New Deal was restricted from most black people during its time in 1940 and 1943, I would think was when it first started. What I'm suggesting would be almost the equivalent of the New Deal, and it would just be for the people who are restricted from the New Deal, and it would not be at the cost of everyone else. And as a result of this, we all do better. I remember having the conversations with my cousin saying, when you get older, you're going to change your mind. It's going to make sense to you. And I was like, no, it won't. It'll never make sense. It doesn't make sense now. Nothing's going to change that. You're going to say, you're going to see when you get older. I'm older. It never made sense. I got older and I remember thinking, he was just wrong. I was never going to go with that. I don't care what's around me. I don't care what's popular. I do what makes sense to me. First off, man, thanks for having this conversation. I don't know much about you. I've had very limited interaction, but the first interaction was you started off with a banger. So just tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you feel like is important about you to this space or to what you intended?
I'm literally just some guy. I didn't really have any intentions for the space. I just, from time to time, I see a lot of online left videos come up in my recommended, and I'll watch them. And I've seen your channel for a long time. Like I told you, I recognized you a bit. I was like, I know this guy from somewhere, but I didn't know from where. And then when I realized you're from Marvel, when you explained the stories and stuff, that was incredible. But yeah, I don't really have goals for the political space. I'm really just an observer. I have opinions, sure. I have thoughts and things. I have suggestions, but
yeah, okay. Then what was your motivation in writing that message? I mean, anyone can, it's simple, right? Like YouTube is there. Anybody can write any message anytime they want to. But I feel like that took a little bit of dedication just because of like the length, right? And it seemed really insightful to have just been kind of a spur of the moment thing. At least that's how I would perceive it, but you tell me.
Yeah, it's something that's been on my mind, like as I've observed this space, and it just kind of, as you were explaining things throughout the video, I was like, it just brought to mind so much that frustrated me with the space, specifically on black issues. I don't know what happens when black issues come up, but like things that would normally be consistent, that I would expect people to be on board with or to address in a certain way, like they just engage with it differently. And I don't really understand what it is, where it comes from, but it's frustrating. And so that's what spurred me to give that comment. So yeah, like you said, the length was really like, because it's thoughts that I've had that kind of just flowed and compiled at one time, but it's been building for a while.
How long did it take you to write it?
Maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Bro, that's crazy. It took me almost 10 minutes to read it.
Yeah, I talk a lot. I can go for a long time.
but nothing in it felt like gratuitous, right? Like it all felt like very poignant. It didn't seem like you were just like word salading or anything. Just it was pretty dense. Yeah, I don't know. I think you do have a really good way with words.
Appreciate the compliment.
So when you say a lot of leftist content came across your page, I remember against your recommendations and things. Are you a left-leaning person? Or where do you stand politically?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty left. I would say up farther than center left, but probably closer to that than progressive.
So you don't consider yourself to be a progressive?
I would, but maybe on some things, maybe I'm not as progressive as others would. So maybe I wouldn't say that. But maybe you might hear me, share my positions and be like, yeah, he'd probably fall into that category.
I see. Also,
like I'm not a socialist or anything. I'm not,
You said so. You're not a socialist.
No, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm that far left, but I'm not opposed to socialist ideas. Like you might hear some Cornel West say something, and I'd be like, that makes sense to me. I'm not, I'm not opposed to it in a hard way, nor am I for it in a hard way.
I think, yeah, man, it's rough because I've gotten into a point where I feel like anytime anyone has fully bought into an ideology of any kind, I immediately think that they're just not critically thinking.
Yeah, I can see.
And so I find like I've interacted with quite a few people who are like, yeah, I might be like slightly conservative, but I don't know. I know I'm not a Republican, right? Or like I'm progressive in a lot of ways, but I'm not a leftist or whatever. Right. And when I encounter those people, it's interesting to me because it feels like the world is constantly kind of moving in the direction of trying to put you into a category, into like a box, and then it's you against whoever is not inside of that box.
Yeah, which is, it's just useless because that's just the cause of a division. There's nothing to gain from that, but that's how we're going.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say social media is a big aspect of that, but I think it's, I don't want to say it's always been that way, but I feel like the conditions for it to be that way have always been there, and then now we have an avenue to express that.
Sure. The thing that you're talking about is tribalism, right? Like we are just, human beings are tribalistic people. We are all tribalistic people. It is what it is. And if we don't have like religion to fight over, then it's countries. And if it's not countries, then it'll be like families. Like my family is better than your family, et cetera, et cetera. And if it's not that, I mean, there's just, we will find a way. Political ideology, the state that we're in. Now it's my state. Now it's within the state, my team versus your team. Right. And it's just, we will find something at the high school level. It's, man, my high school versus the other high schools. The collegiate level, of course, is the exact same thing. We're just tribalistic as what it is. And I think Facebook feeds into that tribalism by constantly, like, it goes through cycles. Social media does in general, where it's at the beginning, it shows you a bunch of people that think like you to reinforce your beliefs, and then it starts,
you're hooked and you're in the bubble, and everything that fits into that, you're like, great. Right. Everything is out, enemy. I don't know how it happens so quickly for people. Like sometimes you'll see a person that just seems kind of like not apolitical, but they're not really interested, and then something will happen. They'll find their way onto like just a Twitter page, and then suddenly everything is changed. Suddenly everything is to give Destiny some credit, called, like he calls it, a constellation of beliefs. It's a very strange phenomenon, but like I get it, but it's just, I don't see how it's happening so fast and so widespread, and so many different bubbles. There's so many different categories now, and everyone's an enemy outside of that bubble. And it's so strange.
It's algorithm. I mean, whatever bubble it is, whatever niche belief you have, all it takes is you sharing that belief, and then someone will like that belief, and like, because they like it, then you start getting exposed to them more, and they get exposed to you more. And if the thing that they liked was that belief, the likelihood of them sharing that belief is like higher. And so now, once they share something related to that belief, the people that like that page on there, if there's any mutuals, then you guys will engage together, and then the algorithm will start putting you all together. And so then before long now, you've created a bubble, not even realizing, just by interacting with like certain things that, like, hey, this is a thing that I'm into. It makes all the sense in the world that, I mean, fringe opinions have always existed, but when we're collectively on social media, then now this fringe starts to feel a lot more important and a lot less fringe.
And very, very loud for how small it is.
Yes. And so then now that becomes like the primary discourse. And because some people make a lot of money from antagonizing any belief, and when they do,
now you can literally just make a tweet and just trigger people, and then I don't know if you're real or not. I don't even know if you believe it. I just know that you're making a lot of money from it. So it's such a strange landscape. That's why lots of times I don't even take, unless like I'll take, like, if you did it or an essayist did it or maybe like a debater did it, I understand like where their opinions, because usually they explain it, right? But if someone just makes a crazy tweet like that, I've learned to ignore it, because I don't really know if they're real or not. I don't even know if they believe it. I don't know what their motivation is, and it's just kind of an insane time.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, what do you prefer to go by? Do you just go by Correct Defense?
You can do that, or Michael. Either way, I don't care.
Okay. And what would you say your ethnicity is?
Very light skinned, but black.
Got it. What about like preferred pronouns or any of that kind of stuff?
I would say he, him.
Okay. In your post, you had mentioned that you were undecided on reparations.
Yes.
Why do you?
But not necessarily the idea of reparations, just whether or not, I don't want to say supporting it, whether or not, that should be a focus. Just simply because I didn't think it was politically viable, like I explained to you in I think later on. But I'm not necessarily against the idea. Like, for example, like I think affirmative action could be a form of reparations. I'm for that. But like specifically, I guess, with you talk about cash infusion into places, whether it's institutions within black communities or just black people themselves, I don't see people accepting that outside. I could see black people accepting, be like, I understand, I get it, we experienced it, our families have experienced it, we come from that, we understand why that might be something that's a worthwhile endeavor. But I don't think outside of us there will be many people who see that idea other than just black people getting free money without thinking about it. than that. But I'm open to being convinced that maybe I'm a little bit of a pessimist in that way, perhaps.
Okay, so that's very different than what I had taken from it.
Okay.
I think
I should have explained that better.
No. It's. I mean, I just did. I wasn't 100% sure, and it might have been just part of the way I read it. But I do feel like I'm inclined to agree with you. I think in that case, I am a little bit. I question the political viability of reparations.
Right.
Not because, of course, it doesn't make sense, not because it wouldn't be economically viable, not because it's not an easy thing to do. It's literally just on the notion that I know that white people are very much opposed to reparations, as are Asians and Hispanics. Except for themselves. So for me, it's like, how do we convince the rest of the world? I don't think that it's even debatable. I feel like almost every person that I've interacted with that's an intelligent and good faith person has to come away from the position that reparations are viable. The two things that I typically cite on this, there's one with that guy, I can't remember his name right, but yeah, where I convinced him on the idea of reparations of some kind within 14 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That was incredibly, it was really quick. And the interesting thing was before I got into the conversation, he had been talking for about an hour and a half. And for an hour and a half, he was opposed to reparation. Like he was just opposed to everything. He was just really conservative Republican type person, and they weren't able to make any headway. I joined the conversation, 14 minutes, and he's like, "Yes, all right, I'm on board." Right. So I was like, "Okay." One, that was two. Jesse Lee Peterson. When I went on his show and I brought up the GI Bill or whatever, and brought up reparations for that, and he was like, "Okay, yeah, for sure, something should be done about that. That's fair, right?" Which, if I can convince a Jesse Lee Peterson type.
Who's insane. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to ask, is he real? Is what I'm watching him? Or is that a character? Or is it played up even?
I think it's played up. It's
okay.
partially real. I think there's I think he's probably a pretty conservative person. I know he knows exactly what the freak he's doing and how nonsensical it is.
Okay. That's what I figured.
Yeah. The reason why I say that is, so when because we've had two primary interactions. The first was when I went to his show. The second one was when he came on my show. And did you see that interview by any chance?
I believe I've seen the first one, but it's been a while. Not the one when he was on yours. I knew he was on yours. I remember seeing the thumbnail, but I didn't see that one. The one where you were on his, I've seen for sure. Yeah. Because I just remember it in my head. And I remember you making this face when he says something, and I remember the face, and it was hilarious. And that's why I had to ask if he's real. Because it's a strange thing that guy's doing.
100%. I genuinely believed that my whole point was I wanted to go on his show because that was what kind of motivated me to get into political discussions. I wanted to do videos and things like that for a while anyway, but just about opinions and things like that. But when I saw,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it was a video of him and this beautiful, incredibly attractive black woman, and she went on a show and he was asking her about systemic oppression and she couldn't answer it. She didn't in that moment. She just didn't perform particularly well. Very intelligent woman. Whatever.
But bringing that intelligence to debate, I mean, that's a hard thing. It's a skill set. Yeah,
especially if you're not prepared for the absurdity that is him. You have to, because it should throw you off. Anyway,
you can't engage with him like in a rational or I'm gonna reason this guy into my position. He's gonna say insane stuff. He's just 100%. Gonna say you can say whatever's coming out next is insane.
Exactly. But so when I saw that, I said, well, one, I think I'm really good with on my toes and just whatever. So I thought if I was in that position, I would do a better job. That's what I remember saying to myself. And so then I kind of prayed about that. I want to get these type of opportunities. And so then, the politisphere thing happened. And then before long, I got invited to his show. And it was this is unbelievable that this is actually happening. And as it happened, I went in there and I feel like that was one of my best performances I've ever done. And I prayed a lot before that moment. I never did it because I recorded all of my thoughts going in, me preparing, getting ready for it, because I think I might make a video out of this, and then I just never did. It's still just chilling on my phone. I'm really bad about capitalizing on the content that I create. Even though I'm doing things with the intention of creating content around it, it's rare for me to ever be
it'll just sit on the PC as a file.
Yeah, all the time. I have videos after videos after videos, and then before long, it's it's so old, I don't want to release this.
I'm literally the exact same way.
Yeah, it's gross. So anyway, I went on the show and I feel like I was the best, again, some of the best form I've ever been. And I really, really think that it had a lot to do with just my preparedness and just the prayers that I was doing and just going into it. And so long story short, I realized that because of the fact that nothing he was saying was like forcing me to the position of like getting angry, because that is a lot. I've watched a lot of his content since, or just had some like recommended, and it's always so and so storms out. Not always, but very frequently. That is his goal.
They don't know what they're getting into.
And so his goal is to push your buttons until you storm out. And if you get up and leave in a tizzy like that, you basically made the content, and he gets to say, see how weak these people are. And that's his goal. And so for me, because I went there and I was like, I'm not leaving nowhere. I'm going to deal with all of these questions and respond in a way that shuts all of your nonsense down. And point after point, he would just kept wanting to move, like just jump to another topic. And each time he was getting more and more absurd and more like trying his best to say as ridiculous a thing he could, because he really wanted me to give him that reaction, which I refused to give him. So from those, I realized, oh no, you're definitely, I don't think you're genuine, because you're literally
just kept getting crazier and crazier.
Yes, just trying to get that reaction that I won't give you. So then there was that. Secondly, he came to my show. When he came to my show, his producer came and another one of his friends came, and so they come to my show and they're like chilling, up against the whatever in the studio, like in the back. Actually, I think you can hear one of their phones go off at one point. It's like, nigga, come on, what are you doing? But anyway, so in that conversation, he's saying like nonsense, and some of the more ridiculous nonsense, his friends in the back are laughing because they know it's absurd.
Okay, so he's got handlers. I see the deal. He's
chuckling as they're chuckling because they all know it's ridiculous. And I'm looking like, bro, what are you saying here? It's particularly, I remember I wanted to get to the whole woman orgasm part, because I was like, this is just other stuff. I feel like there might be arguments for this thing. It's just on its face crazy. And as soon as I started doing it, he's laughing, and his friends were laughing. Like, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is not real. I can tell this isn't real. He knows exactly what he's doing. It's me with
that bothers me a bit, because he not to accuse anyone of anything, but he calls himself a Christian, and so from that mindset, I ask myself, like, how can you be deceitful like this and then also use the name of God in the way he does, the accusatory ways. And I'm a person, I haven't gotten the beam out of my eye, so I leave that out of it. I don't accuse anyone of anything, but there's something there that it's so insidious, and that's why, like, when you say he's not real, that means this is deliberate, and that's a very strange thing. Yes, it's much worse.
Yeah. So the second one, we got into religion quite a bit. I'm a hyper-religious person. Hyper-religious, it sounds crazy, but I'm very religious, like very religiously oriented.
No, I understand what you mean. I get what you mean.
Yeah, and so those were the areas where I was like, okay, I'm ready this time. And I was ready the first time. And I think it got obvious that he was, on some craziness. By the time when he came to my show, and I was like, no, here's the scripture, word for word, it says this, and like confronting him, and I started realizing, no matter what, even if you like completely show him the scripture is very clear here and it says exactly this, he'll say, oh, they added that in. That's not part of the real Bible. That's part of what they added. It's like, who and when was it added? No, that wasn't the way it was supposed to be. The Bible's been changed. And it's like, wait, no. My mother has an original Bible, like one from like literally the 1800s. Like an old translated King James version.
Yeah, that's not too far after the canon was relatively decided. When was that Council of the Trent? I'm misremembering.
I think you think of the Nicene Council, and that was actually in 324 AD. I want to say.
Right, but I think the canon still evolved a bit. And,
after the Nicene Council?
But, right, I think it was Council of Trent. I might be wrong. I might be misremembering. I'm not.
You could be.
My history is not.
You could be right.
On it.
I thought, because I know I think the last one after Nicene, maybe it might have been Council of Trent, and I think in that one specifically is they added the Book of Jude. And before that, like, it was almost everything was like there from Nicene, and then but anyway, so the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered like I want to say early 1900s, and it was just like, hey, now we got preservation to be able to verify that these things haven't changed. But my mother's book was like I want to say 1800s. Like, it's like this really old Bible. It was even hard to read for certain parts because the F's looked like S's, and it was just really weird. But long story short, I'm like, we've compared and found that these things are almost identical. There are some changes, like they might change the word alway to always, things like that. But as far as like actual changes, there aren't any. That's what he uses to like dismiss any criticism of the idea. I literally, to his face, called him a false prophet. I did.
Yeah, the things he says sometimes, I'm like, that's I mean, if that's on your heart, if you feel like you can go to sleep at night and think you didn't wrong God with that, fine. But man, that's
it's absurd. It's absurd.
Rough.
I mean, I would do it. I'm not gonna lie. If it wasn't for my faith, I would do that. I would do what he's doing. There's no way. I'm an articulate nigga, bro. If I was on the Republican side, I would be the Candace Owens, because I can argue and articulate their positions and try to make it as palatable as possible. I'm good enough to do that. Easy. I would make Republicans sound smart. It's
kind of the dark side, you know.
Yeah. I'm not doing that. Like I have a goal. Like I have actual ambition with, or it's hard to not become cynical and disillusioned. But yeah, I mean my whole thing was wanting to actually cause change. The real conversation.
Right. That's another criticism I have just of the space in general. It's like, how do you turn this, like, conversation is great, debating the ideas is great, maybe someone might move, great, maybe the fans or the larger audience might move over, great, but how do we turn this into, like, voting power? How do we turn this into, can we come up with a unique perspective on policy or a new policy? How do we turn this into action? Yeah. And that's something that you don't see too often.
Sure.
You see it, but not as often as it could be or should be.
Yeah.
So that's a very inspirational goal of yours.
So that's, speaking of that goal, I think, like, with reparations, I have a very specific take on reparations. And I came into this conversation prepared to explain to you why reparations is, one, incredibly, why it would be insanely beneficial.
Right. I can see, like, you can, like, when you talk about socioeconomic conditions, like, well, there's a I don't want to say easy fix or simple fix, but you can see a path there. You can do reparations and you can cash infusion, whether it's resources or whatever you need to do to focus on certain areas, but you don't have to look at the whole idea as a whole as just giving Black people money.
Right. I think, to be honest with you, of all of the, like, types of reparations, my least favorite is
just direct cash.
Is direct cash. That's my least favorite.
I would say the same. I would say exactly the same.
Right. Though I'm not opposed to direct cash. I'm not opposed to that, but it is my least favorite. I feel like in order to do reparations right, direct cash is probably going to be a part of it, but there are, like, 3 other primary areas. Those areas are education, housing, and employment, which would be in the form of business loans.
Which we've marched for multiple times. Like, I think you were the one who said that when people say the march for freedom, but they leave out the jobs part almost every time.
Yep. It's March on Washington for jobs and freedom, because niggas wanted employment.
And that's why I get frustrated when the reparation conversation comes up. It's like 1866 civil rights, so it's over. Let's stop. Let's hard stop there. Yeah. Forget everything that happened all the way up till 1964 and just ignore that. And then, it's so far away you can't really justify it.
And since that crime bill, man, is crazy. It's crazy.
And there's further amendments to that same civil rights bill. It doesn't end.
So here's another crazy thing is so not only was I able to convince Jesse Lee Peterson, right, when I went on his show, and then of course that other guy, that's his name, More Perfect Union, and then the next person was I went on this show with this, I want to say her name was Brittany something. I'm so terrible with names. It was Brittany. I know she went by Brittany. And she was, like, on Kick, I want to say, or what's the place that Nick Fuentes started? It was like a streaming platform.
Oh, right. I don't remember.
I can't remember the name of it, but anyway,
I try to ignore that guy.
Yeah, same. She was on that, and I went on there, and there was, like, a channel full of just all these groypers, like people who just, like, legitimately subscribed to they had all this Jewish stuff, like all this anti-Jewish stuff, all these things.
With that anime profile picture every time.
Yeah, some of them niggas, they'll put their actual profiles. They don't even care. They're
really
like literally out and about groypers. Rumble. Insane. I think it might have been Rumble.
Rumble sounds right.
Yeah. And dude, so I went on there. That conversation is also on my channel. And that one, maybe it was about 45 minutes. And I went in there because someone told me, like, these people are talking a bunch of trash about you. And so then it was like, okay, so I went into the channel. I'm, not afraid to confront nobody. So I go in there and I'm like, oh, hey, what you guys have to say? Like, what's going on? And they were just like, yeah, I heard that you're racist and da-da-da, whatever. The same old typical nonsense. And then eventually we got to what do I champion? And I was like, yeah, I champion reparation, da-da-da. And they're just like, oh God, da-da-da. And so they're arguing against me. This is all on my channel already. In literally 45 minutes, every single one of them walked back all of their criticisms. Were like, yeah, you know what? If you put it that way, when the way you're doing it, yes, then obviously that is a good idea. And it's like,
right. I think sometimes they in their head they hear the low hanging fruit and they're so focused on attacking that becomes like what they're against, and they think like everyone thinks that way. Like there isn't a more nuanced version of that same idea.
Right.
And it becomes kind of like an insane like the bubbles we were talking about, where you're not even fighting real people anymore. That person doesn't exist, or if they do, it's a very small amount of them that it exists. and you're like your whole world is now as a groyper just battling this invisible threat that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's the straw man thing. That this is so. What happens is, I forget who it was that it was this guy named Dialogue. Okay. What he basically explained is that the Republican playbook is a thing comes out that's probably good. They then attack that thing and say it's a terrible idea. They then bring on all these pundits to explain what this thing is. The thing that they explain it is a complete straw man and it's not at all related to that thing.
Like critical race theory.
Exactly. And then now everyone is demonizing critical race theory while it's never been no one even actually knows exactly what it is. It's
not really a hard thing. There's so many different schools of thought within it that you can't even really hammer it down. It's this. It means this. They think this.
And so they never ever allow a person from the opposition to come on and explain exactly what it is and why it's beneficial. And so now at this point they've armed all of their base against this thing. And we've never they literally don't know what it is. So they did that with critical race theory. Now they're doing that with wokeism. Now they're it's just, this is a thing.
And it doesn't mean anything. Again, it doesn't have a hard meaning.
It's a vacuous thing that just is all encompassing of anything that's opposed to us. And so knowing that, I recognize that kind of thing happens all the time. And I'm one that I'm hyper resistant to that because of my upbringing. I believed at one point that the church that I was part of was the literal only church, and that any other person that wasn't directly related to that organization was going to hell. That was the way I was raised to believe, okay? And
that sounds intense.
It was. And then on top of that, all of the practices and beliefs associated with that thing were 100% real, and although a bunch of it was nonsense, at the time you don't know this. And so then I had just the belief that anyone who doesn't agree with me is wrong, is going to hell, does not know the truth, and I'm therefore I'm just more informed than them. And so of course, when you get older and you I eventually learned how wrong I was about that. From that point on, I've always come to the conclusion, unless I can come to concrete deductions, then I know that my thing is wrong. Then I don't know anything. And every premise has to be undeniable. It makes me, no matter how solid I am on anything, I have to question it. I'm questioning it all the time. And so
being fine with I don't know, I think, is some of the most important things you can do in discourse. It's just I don't know, or I need to learn more, or looking at it in a different way. Sorry, I'm fumbling my words.
Yeah.
I speak quickly sometimes and I get
you got it. No, but yeah, it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing, and for most people, and I feel like, man, I was the worst, especially growing up. But either way, I think once you have something like that completely shatters your entire worldview, when can you ever feel confident? Because I don't think there was anything I was more confident about than that. It caused me to constantly question. So when I encountered Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, I was a huge fan of theirs. 2018, 2017, I want to say, maybe 2018, yeah. And I was a huge fan. I was watching their content, just yo, these niggas is on it. They're on point, And I remember asking on Facebook and Twitter, hey, does anybody know a Ben Shapiro who argues from the left? I want to know, what, I want to hear those arguments, because I was already bought in. And so then I was well, but if I don't hear the opposition, I don't know for sure. I have to hear people that oppose it so then I can come to a better conclusion. And so I did that. I was looking. People really couldn't find me any people. Some people recommended, eventually some people did mention Destiny. And I was no, it's not the same, and long story short, one day I saw through all of their nonsense. Even while I was bought in, I was constantly looking for, I want to hear the opposite. I want to hear the opposition. So then that way I can know for sure that I think I'm wired that way. I need to hear both sides, or else I can't believe it. So what I'm gonna lay out to you really quick, I believe that for most people, the reason why at the heart of viability of reparations is because most people aren't able or willing to have genuine conversations.
Because once the word comes up in their mind, they already have an idea of what it is, and that heat starts building.
Yes. And I think I've demonstrated through, I'm telling you, the vast majority of my conversations with the opposition that reparations are really viable, and almost no one can argue against it. What I do, because I'm a debater, is I use people's values against them when it comes to that. So for instance, when I'm talking about reparations with Republicans or hyper conservative people, obviously hyper conservative people look at the military is something that's crazily beneficial, right? And like there's just like this like natural patriotism and like a dedication towards this military. And so then I always mention to them, like specifically like conservatives and Republicans, like, okay, the GI Bill like was a really good thing, right? Like,
right. And it helped a lot of people. Not too many of us, but it helped a lot of people.
Right. So then it's like, okay, so if you know these are the reasons why the GI Bill was good, and it's like, okay, because it's not just that it exists, it's why it was necessary. If I went off to war at a very, very young age, when I come back and my people who didn't go to war already have college degrees, are now in the workforce, have work experience, they already bought homes, they're married, they are stable, so on and so forth, those people are going to be living and just thriving. Because I love this country so much, I have to put something in place so that people who dedicate their time, like years of their life to the military, when they get out, that they're able to assimilate into society. We deserve to champion those people and give them like a boost so that they are equal, if not greater than their peers, considering what they did for the country. No conservative or patriot ever disagrees with this. That just, they can't. And so then it's like, okay, now let me point out to you that in like the vast majority of states, less than 1% of GIs were given to black soldiers. Those people fought for this country. They're patriots. Now, what that does to them is it creates an association in their mind. These people were patriots, the white ones that got the GI Bill, and we know that it's beneficial, and the black ones just didn't get it. I've never encountered a person that's just like, well, you know, the black people didn't deserve it. Because most people, I don't think, have that kind of overt racism. Most people it's more about like, no, I just think
it's a more subtle thing, or like it's a status quo thing, like where like they kind of fall into it.
Right. So then now, once I've like now associated like why this thing is beneficial, now I point to you, these black people, they qualify for all the reasons you just said. They dedicated time to the country. They've been set back because they weren't able to get educated during this time. Right. So now that you've seen that, and you have it attached to this thing of valor, which is fighting for our country and being patriotic, then it's like, so you have to do something for those people, right? And it's like, right, obviously. Okay, some people who didn't get the GI Bill are still alive today. And it's like, okay, what should be done about that? And so then for those people, it's like, I'm telling you, I've never encountered a person that's like, yeah, we should be doing something to fix that. And then the question becomes, now, this is where you extend it. If we know that people who got the GI Bill had better life expectancy, right? They were able to make more money over their lifetime. They were able to, whatever. If we know all of that, then it feels like their children are going to be impacted by them being like kept out of the GI Bill, because people who had the GI Bill were able to buy homes, so their children weren't raised in like low income and stuff, like they were living in
better schooling,
better
food,
all of that. So then it's like, what about those people, the direct descendants of the people who fought for that? And it's like, okay, there's an argument for them that we can say that this restriction of the GI Bill directly impacted them through their parents. And it's like, okay, and that was not long ago. Those people are my age, you know what I mean? Or slightly older than me, right? So then it's like, okay, something's got to be done about that. So then now, once I get you on board with that, that is reparations. That's it. And so then it's like, okay, sure, something has to be done there. Now, that's one issue. We can always
there's so many
to like housing discrimination, right? And we can
loans.
Right. So then, but before long, my point being, reparations is incredibly viable. It is incredibly viable. It's just, you have to be able to engage with people where they have to contend with the actual idea of what viable and realistic reparations are, which is why I almost never try to bring up sleep. I think it's the most,
and it's so far away
version.
That's where they're gonna do. They're gonna be like, that's so long away. You can't. No one today is affected by that. We try to move away from that as much as we can. Yep. Even though you can still draw that line and into the direct things that resulted, like we were talking about, like loans, redlining, poor schooling, and Black it on the books, like in the Supreme Court, like Plessy, it's on the books. Like this happened top down.
I wish I could have an argument with someone like Tucker Carlson and have him argue again, or just any of them. I don't think it's a viable argument. You can't argue against that without looking like a bad person.
Now, do you think you can extend that beyond, like, okay, I can get the talking heads to either agree or at least pull back on their talking points about reparations? How do you think you can get to the next step of, okay, we can get people to vote on this, we can get this on the floor, and then it not get stripped down by Republicans into something that's at best like a sympathy card?
Well, if you get all the talking heads to agree with it, then it becomes like popular amongst the people, and then at that point the Republicans who vote against it actually starts becoming
unpopular.
popular, and it becomes dangerous to their campaign if they decide to vote against this thing that everybody wants and that they don't even have a good argument to justify.
Okay, I can see that, but man, I don't. I guess maybe I might be a pessimist. It just feels like a pipe dream. I don't know why. It just feels
but it's a pipe dream because those talking heads wouldn't bring you on specifically because if they did, then now they have this danger. If Tucker Carlson now says, okay, yes, reparation makes sense. Do you understand what that does to his platform? What that does to his base?
That guy's he's the guy.
Right.
He's the guy right now.
So then it's like you can't do that. Candace Owens, if you get her on something like that, then now what can she do anymore, right? Like now at this point, all of the millions of people that follow those people now realize, and for some of them, they're sheeple. They're not people. They're not thinking for themselves at all. This is my pundit, and whatever my pundit says is real. So if he says it's viable, I now believe it's viable. And some of them would even go as far as to be like, yeah, I think reparations make sense. And you'd ask them why, and they wouldn't be able to tell you. They'd say, man, I watched a video, man, and it made all the sense in the world. I was like, okay, well, you give me the points of it. I don't remember exactly what it was, because they don't take in the information. They take away the conclusion. This nigga said it's viable, and I agree with him, and I support him, so therefore it must be viable. And that would be enough to start generally doing it. It's already going to happen. I'm going to tell you why I believe it actually is going to happen. I think what's going to happen is going to happen at state level, and once it happens at state level enough, it becomes more and more popular until eventually you do it. Same thing with
that precedent.
Yeah, because California is at a point where I think we just passed less than a month ago. Like I want to say about 2 weeks ago. I think it's called SB 133.
I remember hearing about this, but I thought it didn't go well. But I'm not sure. You live in California. You can tell me.
Yeah, they just introduced it in the state Senate. We already had the task force for reparations, and that went over, and then they recommended all that money on suggestions, and did the whole study to determine whether or not it made sense, and whether or not why we would be responsible, which is what HR 40 is. HR 40 is not like a resolution for reparations. It's a resolution for a task force to determine, to study, to figure out if reparations make sense, if like how Black people were impacted. And same since California passed that. And when we did, they came away with the conclusion here's the different ways that the state did all kinds of atrocities. And so, we need reparation. And
I was saying they're gonna find it. They make the task force, they're gonna find it. Or unless they don't want to.
Right. And so now that's where we're at. And now California's at that point. I believe people have been saying this for about a year now, that the Democrats are going to run on the conversation of reparations. It's going to be their talking point.
That will be the day.
Yeah. They're losing the black vote.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Bro, they're losing the black vote.
Of course, because we're kind of like hey, you know, come vote for us. We're going to do that thing we've been saying we're going to do for a long time. And then the other option is do you want to have a country? Do you want to vote? Do you want to vote for Republicans right now? Is that what you really want to do? And that's not I might not vote for the other guy. I'll never vote for that. I'll never do it. But I might not vote for you either. I might not show up. So that becomes a concern. You were talking about just how fervent people can get when they hear Tucker Carlson say something, and that's what we believe now. I don't have the arguments for it, but that's what I believe. How do you compete with that on the left? How do you get people, because that's not gonna work. It might work some on the fringes. You might get some people who just buy in. They just hear it. They're favorite talking head says it, and they're in. But for the most part, I don't want to say the left is generally smarter, but I think generally you'll need some kind of argument. You'll need something to back it up. And I don't think, and with there's so much disagreement right now, even amongst the left, how do you get that same passion to just show up and vote on the left?
I think what they've used all this time up to this point is fear, right? It's just the democracy is at stake. The person on the right is the worst person.
And other guys, we're not gonna have a country, so come vote for us, please. But I'm gonna do it, obviously. But I feel like that's not enough. I feel like I'm doing it just because the other is just so bad. Yeah. I crave for it. I want a day where I'm going to the poll because I think this guy has an idea, or these people, my local government, my state government, have ideas that will positively impact everyone's lives, not just Black, but just everyone's lives. And I don't feel that very often anymore. Locally, I do locally, but I don't feel that very often anymore.
I'm gonna tell you, my position at this point is I'm opposed to voting for Biden.
You think so? So don't show up. It's just the bed you made the bed, lay in it.
Yeah, it's this. So, how familiar are you with benign neglect?
Not very, or maybe you'll describe it and I'll be like, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so there's this thing called the Moynihan Report, Basically, when all the riots and everything were happening in the Long Hot Summer of 1967, at that point, and the president decided we need to come up with an understanding of what's causing these riots. Like, why is there so much turmoil? What's going on?
Okay, right. I remember this because there was a similar thing that happened before this in Harlem. LaGuardia did it. Dude. He made a commission. He's like, we got to figure out what's happening to the black people in this area. So it's okay. I remember. What you're saying sounds familiar because
but that happened at the federal level. But yes, that happened at the state level.
Wow, really?
Right? But
really?
The president commissioned like people to study this thing. The guy who ends up making this report is a guy named, I want to say Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And in that report, what he describes are, here's what the country has been doing to these people and the reason why, like, you know, all these things, why the riots and everything are happening. In it, he ends up coining the phrase benign neglect, because what he says is too much attention has been kind of played on race, so that now that we're not like actually recognizing the racial progress that we've made, so now it would probably be more beneficial to serve them with a benign neglect where we actually start focusing more on, at the time I think he said like native issues, Mexican issues, and just other issues, while we don't have to actually do anything for the black people anymore. Like we can just focus on the other people. And so that benign neglect became a policy where now what the Democrat Party does is they appeal to us verbally, but don't actually do the things for us, but would rather focus on everything else. And it's been that way for a while. Right. So then you have now, I think, added to that, because at the time, yes, everyone was pretty united against LGBTQ stuff. Now, LGBTQ is another one of those things where instead of us having to focus on Native American issues anymore, now we focus like almost all of our attention on LGBTQ issues, and we put those things above the black issues. But rather than me just try to paraphrase it, I'm gonna find, if you don't mind, that quote really quick. In
the meantime, I just wanted to point out, like in my comment, one of the things I stress is like, this is just a small. It never ends. Like what you just said. Like I didn't even know about that. It never ends. You can keep going back, and you'll find new things where it's like systematically widespread, long-standing tragedies.
Right. It never stopped. It just never stopped happening.
It may have changed form, but it never stopped. You can draw the line back. Who did you say was president when this?
Nixon.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. What a champion of the black people that guy, huh?
Yep. Man. I feel like I'm gonna be real with you. Nixon was completely terrible for black folks, and Reagan was too.
Right.
I think Bill Clinton was just as bad.
The U.S. Crime Bill era.
It passed under his presidency.
Yep.
You know who wrote that bill?
I don't.
Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I knew he was involved, and I remember this being a criticism of him when he was running. I just didn't know he literally wrote the thing. That's fantastic.
He took credit for it. Bro. Look, I'm gonna say this really quickly. Here's my reparations plan in a nutshell. Okay, focuses on those 4 areas. 1, you do interest-free loans for mortgages and mortgage forgiveness for like outstanding mortgages that already existed. So that way people can replace those mortgages with interest-free loans on their mortgages, right? Interest-free education, interest-free loans on education.
I would almost put that as number 1, but I get what you're saying.
And forgiveness of loans for that education. Interest-free business loans and forgiveness for loans like for business stuff that already exists, and direct cash payments. The reason why I target those 4 things is because those are the biggest determining factors for success and for capital in this country.
Right. Education. Can you start a business? Can you run it? Can you get a loan to buy things like a house that grows over time? Yeah, that makes sense to me.
If you have an interest-free loan on a mortgage, every payment you make on that mortgage is wealth because there's 0 interest. So if I have if I have a house that's valued at $100,000 and I pay off $10,000 of that house of that loan, then that means now the remaining balance in the loan is $90,000.
Right.
But the house is worth $100,000. So if I sell the house right now, I will get $10,000 in equity.
It's a profit,
right?
Well, not necessarily profit, but misspoke.
No matter what, anything I ever pay, every penny that I pay on an interest-free loan is immediately capitalized or realized as equity. So then that means now we just created every payment generates that much money and wealth to yourself. It's not going to interest. It's not going to some bank. It's just going straight to your pocket. It's an immediate savings. It's an immediate wealth generator.
And that's something we have not had, and it's getting worse. Like the problem seems to be getting worse.
Yep. Less than 3% of homes in the country are owned by black people. 3%.
Yeah. And there's just these corporations, I can't remember their names, they're buying up everything. And so the problem is exacerbated. This is affecting everyone, but obviously, almost always, disproportionately us.
Yep. What determines your almost everything? the jobs that you look for, it lowers the cost of like transportation, right? If you don't have to like commute crazily, because you can now live in the areas that whatever, right? The schools, they can get out of, they come from property taxes. You're now living in homes, which means you're generating more property taxes for your area, like in a suburban community, right? So then that means now your children get better education. You have better infrastructure as a whole. At this point, if you were just to start creating these loans for people, what does that cost the government? If the government gave a $400,000 loan for a house, right, with it that was interest free, right, it doesn't cost them anything because I have to pay off the $400,000. Yep. And if I don't pay the $400,000, at that point the government ends up owning that property, and then they can sell it if the value is 400,000, they sell it for the 400,000, and they make even anyway. So at the end of the day, it doesn't change the budget. It doesn't boost the budget, right? So my point being, that is reparations. And if you look at what happened in the New Deal, what did they do? They came up with the FHA, right? Federal Housing Administration, and they start creating and backing these government insured loans so that people can buy houses. What's the next thing that they do? They train them for jobs, right? So they build these communities and subsidize these communities next to power plants so niggas can live in them, right? So they give job training. Then they also start doing the education thing. They start subsidizing education and all that kind of stuff so that people can actually just get ahead in life. The New Deal was restricted from most black people during its time in the 1940 and 1943, I would think was when it first started. What I'm suggesting would be almost the equivalent of the New Deal. And it would just be for the people who are restricted from the New Deal. And it would not be at the cost of everyone else. And as a result of this, we all do better. Now, all the crime and the things that we're spending, the billions that we're spending in this country on law enforcement start depleting, right? Or start diminishing, because crime disappears when people have better opportunities. Yep. A college educated person is 1 billion times less likely to end up in prison than a non-college educated person. Economics are the number one reason why black people don't get married. The number one. So then now, because you have better economic opportunity, because you're not embodied by debt, you have better educational opportunities and so on and so forth. Now you have better two-parent households. Obviously, single-parent households lead to worse education opportunities, worse job acquisition, and more likely to be in prison and more crime. So all of these things fix all of the pathological issues that they say plague the black community, and it's little to no cost.
And this is where I feel like you can't argue against this. But how do you get, maybe I'm, again, just a pessimist, how do you get people to just listen to that? Just to say, hold on, just like I know you heard the word reparations, you think I mean one thing, I don't mean that. And then also the benefits that affect everybody. Because again, going back to my comment, this is an American problem. It's not a black American, it's an American problem.
Sure.
To be solved by Americans on the whole.
Oh yeah.
Because we can't vote that in.
We can't. Education is what does it. Every time you get into those conversations, what we need is more people who are able to articulate those things and to have those conversations in front of, people with larger audiences. That is why it was important, like after that white grievance panel, why I was like, oh, no, I'm going to correct this nigga on every nonsensical thing he said about reparations, about white issues, and so on and so forth. That's why I took it on myself to do that. And I did. I went to his channel, we had that discussion, and by the end of the discussion, I had made some of those points. And as dismissive as he wanted to be, you heard him say on certain parts, okay, Fanatiq, I agree. I guess I agree. Did you think I would disagree with that? There was a point where he said that. Do you think I would disagree with that? And I'm like, well, it's direct contradiction to what you said on that panel, but it's fine. If we're on the same page now, good. So we corrected that narrative. But his intention was to be as dismissive as possible, because who wants to take 5 back-to-back L's and have to admit, okay, yes, I was wrong about this. Yeah, I was wrong about that. And yeah, no, okay, so then I am on board with these things. And then now you still got to go back to your friends, Lauren Southern and Nick Fuentes and all the other white supremacists that you end up talking to. And then you have to try to make sure you have to contend with the idea that there's an inconsistency here. Because in your ear, I'm saying, yeah, no, I think race is overplayed and race isn't holding anybody back. And so that it's not an issue. We shouldn't be focused on it. And now to me, you just said, yeah, reparations absolutely makes sense. And I agree. It's a problem.
Because I don't think, this is something that I guess this is a broader conversation about just black leaders in general, but it feels like we had a gap there. Like there were strong, charismatic, intellectual leaders we had, right? Mm-hmm. Then they were assassinated, ran out of the country, so on, peter out, or just got older and just like times change and we need a new voice. How do you broaden this to more than just a couple? Like I know there's a few though. I forget his name. I'm sorry. FD Signifier. Yeah. Yep. There are those voices rising, specifically online. How do you broaden that to one, not just online, but political action in general, because I think we're sorely as a community missing that like, not to disparage celebrities and rappers and athletes and stuff. That's great, and I'm glad they're successful. But if they're at the forefront of the culture, it used to be, yes, they were at the forefront. They brought the eyes, and then alongside them, you have the kings. You know, you have the Baldwins alongside them pushing that culture forward. How do we get back to that? Because there's a gap of successors. Like, you can see, like, I don't want to say 70s hard stop, but it feels like a hard stop where there's a gap. And it's just the older guys just, you know, petering out, losing the current times, you know. How do
Hip-hop took over.
Right, exactly.
So one, you have to find allies. Like, you find other people with large platforms and share that information on those platforms, and then that stuff starts becoming normalized to the people. Because even if, like, the person that I'm talking to as an individual is not willing to admit that what I'm saying is sound and that we should probably, some people in their audience are listening and go, dang, that nigga kind of spit, right? You have to put yourself in a position to be able to get your message out there more, grow your platform, and so on and so forth. For me, I run into an issue because I think the easiest way to grow your platform is to either grift or to talk about things that don't matter but just are popular. So I should be probably talking about this P. Diddy thing, right? When that's trending, I should just find whatever's trending and talk about it. I should have made videos about the brick lady. I should have made videos about, you know what I mean? It's just to go under those pop issues. I don't really have the stomach for that. My goal is to make change. It's not to grow for my own self. But then it feels like the best way to try to get your message larger is to grow for your own self, or to just grow your platform. And to grow your platform, you need to be selfish, it feels. And so I'm always at a conundrum.
Is that a struggle for you? Is that, you know, like we talked about earlier, like going over there, because you can do it. I know you could probably, like, I can be a little more dishonest if I wanted to. I can force people into boxes with their positions, even though they don't really mean that. But I can point to this one thing here, attack it as hard as I can, and then we're off to the races on another conversation. You could do that, and you can get, you know, loud and boisterous and bring the eyes. But is that something that you feel would compromise your overall mission, or is that something that?
Yes, I am my integrity. So if I'm going to start doing things that go against my integrity, then
what's the point?
Who am I anymore? I have to kill myself to do that, because I am that. My thoughts, my actions, my beliefs, everything is rooted in my integrity, what's fair, what's righteous. So then if I'm going to start doing something dishonest and unrighteous for success, then that means now that this success is going to be at odds with me as a human being for the rest of my life. And I would not be able to sleep. I would not be able to contend with it. I would just never have peace. I wouldn't feel like there's a purpose to my life. Why would I continue to exist? Legitimately, I don't know how to function outside of that, which is why my faith is so absolutely important to me. Like, it's literally everything to me. If I didn't have God, I don't believe I would exist. I would have probably done something tragic a long time ago. I think God cured my depression and gave me a reason to live. If I'm now want to just go ahead and decide I'm just going to sell out my integrity, I can't do it. I'm telling you, I genuinely don't know what would be my purpose of living, legitimately. So I think to destroy my integrity would be to destroy myself, and I'm not doing that. Then it's like, I mean, I have a mission. My mission is to be educational. My mission is to be informative. So then it's like, if I start doing pop nonsense that doesn't have any value, one, I won't have any motivation to do it. And then two, now this is like, people can't trust me. I want to be trusted. I want it to always be, this is where I live my life, my personal life, and just everything. I want it to always be that if I'm speaking, someone knows I genuinely believe what I'm saying. It's the truth. If I can be wrong, but I'm never being dishonest. I feel like once I start going against those things and just talking about stuff I don't genuinely believe in, whatever, I feel like that's, people stop trusting. People stop trusting that. Of course, that means that I'm going to be boring. If I'm never willing to do the entertaining stuff, it's like, oh, this is a boring nigga. And I'd rather be boring and trusted and respected by honest people, be entertaining, and just have the world on my side. Probably some more cult conditioning, but that's how I'm oriented, how I have been my entire life. I've never done something because it's popular. I only do what I want to do, what I'm motivated to do, and what makes sense to me. Outside of that, I don't care what the masses say. I didn't follow the clothing trends when I was growing up. I never wanted to get involved with the gang nonsense, even though it was literally everywhere. In my own family, almost every sibling I have was gang affiliated. My cousins were gang affiliated. My dad was gang affiliated. I made a determination at a very young age. I never want to be in that. I never want to be in that. I never want to be involved in that. I don't see the sense in. I remember having the conversations with my cousin saying, when you get older, you're going to change your mind. It's going to make sense to you. And I was like, no, it won't. It'll never make sense. It doesn't make sense now. Nothing's going to change that. You're going to say, you're going to see when you get older. I'm older. It never made sense. I got older and I remember thinking, you know, he was just wrong. I was never going to go with that. I don't care what's around me. I don't care what's popular. I do what makes sense to me. Now, that's how I'm always going to be, no matter what. I'm comfortable there. I can stand on my own 2 feet. I can sleep at night, even though I don't sleep very well, to be honest. But I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I can sleep at night, and I can rest assured I never have to look over my shoulder and be like, dang, do I remember the lie that I told then? I don't have to do that. I know I told the truth. Someone can come to me and say, yeah, you lied, and I can look at you dead in your face and say, I absolutely not. I know for a fact that didn't happen, and nobody that knows me believes you. Doesn't bother me. So it is a struggle.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up to say, what do you think? And that's wonderful to hear, like that, you know, I'm glad you're like that. But how do you now, you know, go forward and say, if I feel the need, like I have to grow to get the message out there, to be effective at my goal, what are the ways you feel like now, all right, I'm gonna do this instead, or maybe I'll go here, I'll talk to this person. Like what are your steps forward now in that context?
I just have to capitalize on more opportunities, right? Like at the time when I went on the Jesse Lee Peterson show, I felt like that was me in front of a pretty large audience saying my piece. I looked in the comments of his thing, and I remember like of course, the majority of comments are going to be Jesse Lee Peterson fans, but I remember a lot of conversations. I mean, I saw a lot of comments where people were just like, "This is the smartest guest that's ever been on Jesse Lee Peterson," right? I needed to like capitalize on that and put out a lot of content during that time. That's what I needed to do, and I didn't. At the time, my editor was going through depression. Not my current editor, because it's a different person, but he was just like, yeah, I was just going through a lot of depression at that time. I'm feeding that nigga a bunch of content at the time, and he wasn't doing it. At the day the Jesse Lee Peterson thing aired, one of my brother, not my blood brother, but somebody who I considered a brother, had passed during that time. I was in North Carolina at his funeral. I was not home to be able to capitalize on it at the time while it was going on. So it was like, I needed to do that. I needed to capitalize, and I didn't. Confluence, me being at the funeral, my editor going through a depression and therefore not putting out any content, just kind of screwed me over during that time. But that's what it is. It's when you have a wave, when you're getting attention, it's to start putting out content during that time and capitalizing and capturing the eyes that are on you. And that's what I have to do.
Oh, that was wonderful to hear, honestly.
I need to talk to FD Signifier. We were scheduled for a conversation, and then I ended up screwing it or no, he was like, yeah, we got to reschedule because I double booked you. And I was supposed to like reschedule immediately. I didn't. I would probably took 3 weeks, and then now no contact. That would have been a pretty decent sized audience to have a decent conversation with. You just gotta capitalize on that. I've been on some pretty sizable platforms, to be honest. Capitalizing. I think even going on Destiny's platform. So the majority of those kids are gonna just side with whatever he says. I know a great number of people from his audience definitely felt differently. In fact, when I first did the very first debate with Annalicia, a lot of comments were just like, man, Fanatiq always did make a lot of sense. I think I've seen them in the threads where people some people will be debating like, hey, like that I don't know. And they'll be saying stuff like, I feel like this community just reacts really poorly to this guy, and I don't understand why. He has always been really cool. I feel like this is a straw man. He's never said these things, and I don't know why this, whatever. And then that person gets attacked relentlessly. And most people are not built like me, so they're not going to feel comfortable being the alone nigga in the thread saying
back off.
Yep, like they say their piece, get attacked crazily, and say, I'm just not going to speak up. But I know a decent number of those people definitely recognize that I never was sitting there, whatever. So I think it's just a matter of... You can
see it in your comments. I've yet to see a criticism beyond, I just don't like what I'm hearing.
Because they don't have it. Or the other one is that they'll say, yeah, you said such and such. And I'll be like, hey, can you find me a single timestamp where I said that? That's why I love putting that in my video, where it's like, you can't find a single incident of me ever saying that I'm against interracial marriage or even anything adjacent to that. You can't find it. And they can't. The only thing they can resort to is straw man and lying on it.
Or saying, you're leaving it out of context when you... in the description is all the videos with the context.
Yep.
That was insane.
You didn't put you left out what he was actually saying. And it's like, one, I didn't intentionally strawman or distort anything that he said. We got an hour of footage. It's all there, and we put the links to every single thing that we were referencing in there. Show me a single video. Show me. There isn't. Because that was the thing too. I could have just decided to be like, it would have been really easy to be hyperbolic in that video, right? I can just start like Destiny does, and then like take some of the stuff he says out of context and make it really, really, really bad in order to whatever, to make it clickbait-y. And I just don't do that. That's just not in me. I debated that Andrew Wilson guy. We were having a debate on rape, okay? And about consent and all these things. And there was a point in time when we got into the conversation where I was asking him, if you show up to a bar and a woman is blackout drunk and you're sober and she invites you back to her place and you go back there and have sex with her while she is still blackout drunk, is that rape? And he said no. It would have been very easy to become very bombastic, take that argument and start painting it like this guy said da, and then make really salacious nonsense and it blow up on Twitter because now I just pointed out that this guy basically justified rape. I could do that. And I'm not taking him out of context. We debated it until we got very crystal clear before I asked that question. So he genuinely believes that. It's just, what does that do for him? What does that do for him? What does that do for me?
What does it do for Andrew? That's what I was talking about, the beam out of my eye. Like, I'm not gonna, I don't see the value of beyond, unless someone's doing something like that. Like they're saying this thing to get people to do something. I don't think, not to say I support it. I would say I strongly disagree with just saying here.
Right.
But you know, I don't like the constant, like, I have to come out of this looking like I dominated. I have to come out of this looking like the other guy was insane. I don't think that's anything for anybody.
And that's not my goal. My goal is I just want the information to be out there. Because a lot of times, again, I don't need to change your mind. I just need to change the mind of your audience. I need truth seekers to hear that and go, oh, this nigga kind of spit. He's making sense. And then we move forward from there. That's what I need. That's what I want to do. That's my mission. And if because I was doing therapy, when my fiance and I were together, like she had gotten some therapy and then I had gotten some, and then we did some couple stuff. And that was something that I taken away from my therapist, where she was like, she was really making me, part of mindfulness was defining what my goals and missions were with the things that I was doing, so that it had a purpose, so that it was actually meaningful. Because for me, I kept saying, like, I want meaning in my life. I want things to mean something to me. And the only way that you're going to get to that type of meaning is if you have a goal and a purpose and you stick by it. And so it's like, okay, so then that's what I want to do. I want to be meaningful. I want those things. So then it's like, okay, everything that I'm doing has to be falling underneath that, or else it's going to feel vapid, And I don't want to. I need it. I need that to exist again, because otherwise it's just what would be the purpose of living? I think for me, if I know that I have something to do, then it's really hard for me to do other things when I know that I have to do that thing. I think it might be some ADHD stuff, I don't know. But it's like, because I knew I needed to do this Destiny video for a long time, I wasn't putting in the work that I was supposed to. And so I didn't end up doing it. So but now it's like, okay, I got the time, I got the ability, I'm doing it. I'm gonna do this content, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and like completely move on. For me, now that I've said my piece, I don't care. I literally can't care less about that community. I don't feel bothered. They can say whatever they want. And now anytime someone comes into my stream, because they still do that occasionally, hey man, when you gonna, what happened with you in Destiny? Why'd you get bodied by Destiny? It's like, here's a video, this explains it, blow me, right? Like I no longer feel any need to interact with that at all. I said all my piece, and anyone who disagrees with it is an idiot. And I don't care. You're wrong. I'm right. Like I'm serious. So now I'm on to making more content, doing the stuff that I'm passionate about, just trying to become a better voice within the space, and started impacting things.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Just with any intelligent, it's kind of biased, but intelligent Black voices, I feel like we don't have enough in a way that's unique. Like lots of times, like you can get very educated, but there's a way, like you said, synthesizing that idea into like, I can demonstrate this in an argument. I can talk to you about whatever you agree with, whatever I agree with, and we can find a balance there. I'm trying to link this back to where I was talking about the lack of Black leaders.
Yeah.
And there are people here in that space who can fill that role, but they're not, and I don't want to know if it's the algorithm, I don't know if it's just a general disposition of the viewer base to not elevate these voices, but I'm waiting for that time where there's a unity there between like people like you, like we said, FD Signifier, there's others. I hope there comes a time where that space exists for us.
Sure. I'm going to say for the record, I think a lot of times the reason why people don't want to be Black leaders is because Black leaders get attacked, I think, in some of the most severe ways. I think more so than like anybody else. And it scares people. I think the reason Tariq Nasheed doesn't want to call himself the leader of the FBA thing is because if that happens, then there's more eyes on him, and then he starts getting attacked deeper. Tariq Nasheed is very obviously the leader of that FBA cult, which I'm not associated with. He is. Ain't no way around it. Every Black leader gets attacked. Malcolm X was murdered. Fred Hampton was murdered. Martin Luther King was murdered. That's just the way that they do things. So unless you're just going to be a leader within the status quo in which you're not really creating any crazy change, then they'll let you go. So,
and not to insult the old guys, but that's, you know, when I look at Al Sharpton, I'm like, it's not really, what you did was great, and I'm not taking that away and not saying the devalue. Like, my life is better because you were in it, right?
Yep.
But we have, not to say new problems, but like, for example, like peaceful protesting, we need this, right? But now there's so many people who are on board that necessarily you're gonna have more bad apples. And it only takes a couple just to do one bad thing, and next thing you know, it's a riot now, right? We need the next step. Like, how do we peacefully? Because I believe in that, the nonviolence, the peaceful, obviously. How do we get to that next step with the leaders of today? So that's why I keep bringing back to this leader thing, but I'm kind of repeating myself.
Yeah.
A little nervous. You know, I don't talk these things out like this all the time. Usually I have time to, you know, sit down. What do I think about this?
Yeah.
You know, on the moment. That's why I said, like, what you do is incredible, impressive to me, and I'm glad you're there to do that.
Thank you. Again, you said that a few times, and I
Annalicia
appreciate it. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You good?
But the Annalicia, I believe her name was. I don't want to mispronounce it, but that arc, if you weren't there, like that was the most insane thing that was happening to me. And all this, the time, that was one of those times where I was like, this guy, I know you know better than what she's saying right now. I know you do.
Yeah.
And yet now this time it's like, okay, no, I need Alba in here. I need Fanatiq in here because I just can't possibly understand. Like, what happened there? That if you were not there, if you weren't willing to say, okay, I'm coming in here, that would have just been her preaching to our audience who are like, if he's not pushing back, they're now, are they gonna on their own for the most part?
They're gonna internalize
some of them
everything
will,
she
sure,
said.
but exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, I think, I don't know. It was just right place at the right time. Had done enough research at that time to come to these conclusions. And again, it's always that way. It's so crazy. You know, they say success is when preparation meets opportunity. And the thing is, I feel like I'd be doing a lot to prepare, not knowing that I'm preparing, right? I did not know when I was like practicing, you know, piano all those years. I didn't know that, like, oh, hey, I'm learning the piano, like for my jobs. I didn't know that was a thing, but I definitely prepared myself. So I think in the same sense, I did not know when I first looked up redlining, and started learning about Black history and things like that, that was going to be leading to these kinds of conversations, being on Jesse Lee Peterson, interacting with the hate group, you know, just being on these panels and all that stuff. I just didn't know that was going to happen. I did it because I just wanted to do it. I used to do that all the time, just look up information because I wanted it. I did not know that this is going to change my thinking, right? Like I just was doing it because someone asked me about it. Like, you ever heard of redlining? My brother, Johan, he said, man, look up redlining. And I was like, what's that? He's like, look it up. It's going to blow your mind. I looked it up.
Oh, does it?
I didn't know that was a thing.
They're still there. You can draw those same lines and those same. You see the same families with the same problems, the same Black people, the same poverty, in the same areas. It's insane.
Yep. There's been no attenuants.
How do we solve it? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't acknowledge where it came from, it's like, yeah, on the books, de jure, it's illegal, and yet you can still draw the same exact lines.
Mm-hmm. If there's been no attenuants, then nothing changed. You changed it. But what Malcolm X says has been a thought on my brain all day. It's like, you've given me a change that you can tell me, but you can't show me. So many of our policies are exactly that. But I mean, I need help. I think I want to talk to you. I mean, there always has to be teams of people to help do the things, right? Like, I need an actual team of people to help me actually do the things that I need to do. You look at someone like Tucker Carlson. You look at Tucker Carlson. Do you remember when there was that big old scandal because one of the writers for Tucker Carlson ended up being a KKK nigga on the...
We caught him. We got him.
Yeah.
There's no debate this time.
Remember that? So...
Head writer, which is insane.
Head writer. That was his head writer. Tucker Carlson doesn't come up with
people
all his ideas.
People have to you have to pretend like I don't know that. Oh, that's his head writer. You're gonna tell me he had no idea. Right. You're gonna I have to pretend now. It's like, well, you can't prove it. You can't. We really that. That's so frustrating. You have to contend to that when you do debates. You have to be like, I can't just be accusatory like that, where everybody knows. Like, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, but you know what? It's okay. I don't have to prove that Tucker Carlson doesn't know. All I have to do is prove that Tucker Carlson put forward a lot of the ideas that was the generation. That was the origin of a lot of his ideas, right? So then we just know this is what this nigga's spewing. Escape and float into